It's true. The interior of the Lexus GX550 is crap, especially in the Overtrail trim edition. Today I'm going to be talking about the inside of the Lexus GX550 Overtrail. I was finally able to drive 2 hours away from here in the desert to a Lexus dealer to actually see the interior of the GX550 Overtrail Plus. And it's crap. What everybody says is true. It's no good. Now, in the past, before this vehicle came out and we were just looking at pictures, people claimed, yeah, it's trash, it's a cheap Lexus interior. And I said, oh no, that's not cheap, it's just conservative looking, like this boring interior of this 2021 Lexus GX460. It's just boring, it's just conservative. But the fact of the matter is, and the sad truth is, the GX550 Overtrail interior is not up to Lexus standards at all, and it's a big fail. It's a big disappointment, and I think it's going to come back to haunt Lexus in the near future. First, we got to establish that Lexus and Toyota know how to do interiors right. Got to understand, the Lexus GX550 on the TNGA-F platform is nothing more than a Land Cruiser 300 in the world market with a Lexus L sticker on it. That's right, all Toyota trucks and SUVs now are on one singular platform, the TNGA-F platform. The mother vehicle on top of this platform, the whole reason for this platform was the world market Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport. And we know Toyota knows how to do a proper luxury interior because that Land Cruiser 300 interior is excellent. And we're going to take a look at that in a second. When it comes to the GX550 Overtrail, Lexus missed the mark. The first thing we saw when we sat in the GX550 Overtrail was the level of quality on the inside was a downgrade lower than this GX460. And as a Lexus buyer, you shouldn't be coming from one Lexus GX, an old one, and to the new Lexus GX550 and think of it as a downgrade on the interior. No luxury car buyer should be like unimpressed basically when they sit in this $83,000 luxury SUV. Lexus cut corners on the inside, and it is crystal clear and apparent that they did so purposefully. The inside of this Lexus GX460 is impressive. At the dealer, when we sat in it, you immediately go, wow, this is nice. Now, it's of course not a Rolls Royce, but you get in it and you don't long for anything, and nothing certainly stands out as inferior or cheap or low grade, or worst of all, some sort of compromise. But compromise is exactly what you get with the inside of the Lexus GX550 Overtrail. Lexus and Toyota had to compromise because, like I said earlier, all Toyota and Lexus trucks and SUVs are now on the TNGA-F platform. So in essence, a lot of vehicles died, and most people don't even realize it. Now, what I mean by a lot of Toyota and Lexus vehicles died without anybody knowing it, and this triggers people, but it's the truth, and that's why you're on this channel. But the fact is, the Lexus GX is dead. It died. The 4Runner died. The Fortuner died. The Hilux died. The Tacoma died. Why? Because previously, those vehicles that I just mentioned were on their own separate platforms. So they had their own special platforms and they could be trimmed accordingly. As I keep saying, now all of those vehicles I just mentioned are on, or going to be on, the TNGA-F singular truck and SUV Toyota platform. They're all crowded into this Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport platform. And so now Toyota has to make a bunch of vehicles that were normally on different platforms all fit onto one platform, and they have to do so in a way that doesn't cannibalize the higher trims. In other words, if in order to bring over a Lexus GX on now a TNGA-F Land Cruiser 300 platform, they have to make a way so GX buyers don't get the same level of fanciness and luxury as an LX600 buyer, which is also on the same platform. So what Lexus had to do, because GX frame and LX600 frame is the same now, where before GX was a Land Cruiser Prado frame and LX was a Land Cruiser 200 frame. They were different. Now that they're on the same thing, GX550, LX600, same thing now. So how do we differentiate between the two models, and how do we get buyers to know the difference? Well, we have to cheap out somewhere. We have to sacrifice. It's the same vehicle, right? So now we have to give the GX550 the cheap interior, and that's exactly what we experienced when we sat in it at the dealer. My wife is not some sort of Toyota fangirl. The first thing she noticed was the interior is cheap. Right next to it was an LX600 interior, which has an interior like this GX460 interior. In other words, a proper Toyota Land Cruiser interior, or a Lexus GX460 interior. Get what I'm rambling here? And I know I'm rambling. It has a Lexus interior, and Lexus has always provided people with proper luxury interiors. The wood wheel on the GX550 Overtrail is missing. There's a wood wheel right here on most other Lexuses. All of this leather, this whatever, whether it's fake or not, the stitching, whatever, it's here on this 460. It's not there on the 550. They had to cut it back. They had to trim it back so it wouldn't become a Lexus LX600. Now, many will argue, well, Lexus had to cut the interior on the GX550 Overtrail so it wouldn't become too expensive, because after all, the old Land Cruiser 200 didn't sell well here in America, which had a great interior, because it was too expensive. And to that I say, the Land Cruiser 200 failed in America because Toyota of America did absolutely positively zero marketing of the Land Cruiser 200 when it was here. Years ago, when it was here, people thought the Land Cruiser 200 wasn't even here. So Toyota thinks that, well, nobody's going to buy that Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport, the real Land Cruiser, not the 250 that we're getting here in America. But nobody's going to buy the Land Cruiser 300 here in America because people, meaning Americans, won't pay that much for a Land Cruiser. And that's not true. The issue with the Land Cruiser 200 and why it failed is because they didn't market it. Nobody knew what it could do off-road. Nobody knew that it was even a capable off-road vehicle. Sure, they heard the name Land Cruiser, blah, 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 but Toyota didn't put it in the hands of actual off-road professionals and really showcase what the Land Cruiser 200 could do off-road. So nobody knew what it was. And so today, when we fast forward today, we don't get the Land Cruiser 300. We get a Lexus, a watered-down Lexus GX550 Overtrail with a cheap interior now. And the interior is made cheap again for cost-cutting reasons, in order to keep some sort of value proposition to the buyer, or Lexus buyer, as if that's relevant. I'm going to tell you the truth. As a Lexus GX buyer, and most Lexus buyers out there, we already know it's a Lexus. So we're not pinching pennies between 60,000, 80,000, 100,000, 150,000. Even though that's a range, and there's obviously a cheap end and a more expensive end, we get it. It's a Lexus. And we're not looking to, oh, well, let's see, did they make a Lexus with a cheaper interior? Let's get rid of this wood, and let's make the plastic cheaper, and let's get rid of the third row, which we'll talk about in a second. Let's cut corners everywhere, just so I can have a Lexus. We're shopping for luxury vehicles because we like that stuff. Off-road or not, whatever. I'm just saying, the inside, when someone wants to sit in a luxury vehicle like a Lexus, they want to see that stuff. And when you sit in a Lexus GX550 Overtrail, it is pure Toyota quality and not Lexus quality, and everybody out there is saying it. Why Lexus American marketing thought it would be a good idea to make a value proposition for a luxury market, that's an opposition, that's an oxymoron. Well, let's give them a value on a luxury vehicle. We already know, as stated, it's a splurge. And when you sit your butt or into a luxury vehicle, or you open the door, you want the luxury first and foremost. And on the GX550 Overtrail, it is definitely missing. The luxury is missing. Something else that's missing is the third row. Now, we knew this. The Overtrail doesn't get the third row. But when you look at that cheap interior, now in real life, when you look at that cheapish interior and then they deleted the third row, I know for certain now it wasn't to appease the overlanding commandos out there that just can't have a third row because they have too much stuff that they need to pack in their vehicles to go on their adventures. Nonsense. They just did it to keep the price down. And so when you see this cheap interior with no third row, it hits even worse. It's just unimpressive. And I'm a Toyota fanboy, and I appreciate the mechanicals like many of you do out there. And so I really want it to work, but the average buyer who doesn't see the mechanical reliability stuff of a Toyota nerd does, and they just want a luxury vehicle, what they're going to see inside of a GX550 Overtrail Plus is a relatively expensive price for a cheap interior and no third row. Now, the no third row is a subject of contention with a lot of people. When I say no third row, I mean Lexus should have offered it as an option on the Overtrail. And so you should be able to pay $2,000, $3,000 extra to get a foldable third row. We keep our third row down all the time. It's full of junk. But when you need a third row for kids, in-laws, picking people up that are stranded on the street, whatever you're doing with it, you never say, boy, I wish I didn't have this foldable, collapsible third row. But then there's some weird overlanding commando argument that they just have to have that extra 3 cubic feet of volume that the collapsible third row takes up, so your overlanding crap can be packed to the gills in the back, even though you'll never see any overlander packed to the gills, meaning all the volume of a GX you'll never see from floor to ceiling packed up, ever. But they're still going to claim that they don't need the third row and they need that extra space, and that's nonsense. But Lexus is playing off that smartly because it's a win-win for them. They can delete the third row, still charge you like you're getting a third row, and then you can feel happy as an overlanding commando that you don't have those third row for those kids and in-laws and such. You go on adventures. Will it be fixed in the future? In my opinion, it has to be fixed in the future, because as a Lexus buyer, there's no way that interior is good enough. Not for any sort of price point or any nonsense like that. I'm just saying for a luxury vehicle buyer. As stated, you want to be wowed and impressed, and you want the top level of an interior when you step into a luxury vehicle. And so it's not going through my head or the head of a Lexus buyer, what's the price on this thing? You just want to be impressed. You want the good stuff. That's why you're buying a Lexus instead of a Kia, right? So when you see an Overtrail Plus on the 550, it's just underwhelming. But we know, Lexus knows this is a first-year model, there's a lot of hype behind it, and they want to extend the profit margin. They want to do the least and get the most profit. And they're hoping to catch those early adopters that just have to have the newest and latest and greatest. And that is a market. And Lexus is smart for doing that. But they would not be smart by ignoring the true market. After the hype, once these GX550s are a dime a dozen on the road, and they're up against every other luxury manufacturer out there, then they need to get back to the real Lexus stuff, which is fix the interior, put a proper traditional Lexus interior that has everything inside. Forget about the price, just make it right. There's an argument that Lexus and Toyota can't sell their high-end Land Cruisers or Land Cruiser Lexus derivatives. You get what I'm saying, like the Land Cruiser 300 in America, because Americans just won't spend that much for a Toyota or a Lexus off-road SUV. Nobody will take a SUV that's that expensive off-road, even though it happens all the time out here in Southern California. No, Lexus and Toyota have screwed up the marketing for the past 20 years. They refuse, again, to actually showcase professional off-roaders, not me, not YouTube automotive journalists that do stupid stuff and literally break the vehicle because they're too...
Okay, anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's go back to the interior. Now, this is the Toyota Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport that we don't get here in America. This is the mother vehicle. Look at this interior. Just look at it. The padding, the thickness of the materials. It gives this whole top quality, insulated, heavy duty, substantial type of, it has that feel to it. Look at the stitching on this whole like side piece or whatever. It's good stuff. The stitching, it's solid. This reminds you of a Lexus interior here. Now this is the GX550 Overtrail interior, and immediately you can see that the seats, something's missing here. They don't have the same level of bolstering down here on the sides. There's no padding. There's nothing thick and substantial on this whole center console. There's pieces missing on the side. The dash is flat. It's thin. It's unsubstantial. It has a cheap vibe to it that everybody knows. Everybody's talking about. Blah blah blah. But you can see it here. It's not something that should be on a Lexus. You can see clearly that this is a downgrade from the Land Cruiser 300, the Toyota. So hopping back over to the Lexus LX600, that's what this is. They put the wood back. This is dark here, but it is wood. Wood on the top and the bottom here, just like the GX460. You can see the stitching and the thickness of everything. It's puffed up more. The front, everything just has that substantial, proper Lexus feel to it all around, and that's what's missing on the 550. Now, it's hard to convey interior quality through the internet, through looking at still pictures. This, again, is the LX600. I don't know what trim it is, but in person, you get a better appreciation for how much better this interior is versus the GX550 interior. It's just something that you have to experience in person, but this interior on the LX600 is similar to the GX460 interior, whereas the 550 interior is your typical, higher end Toyota interior, but nowhere near the old GX460 proper Lexus interior. Again, this is better conveyed in person, but once you're there in person, you're going to immediately see and feel the difference between interior qualities.
But imagine if Lexus did the exact opposite, what they're supposed to do, which is actually use professional off-roaders to showcase what the vehicle can do off-road and all of its amazing abilities that the engineers engineered into those Land Cruisers and GXs and LXs. Now, you might say that wouldn't matter because most people aren't going to take their Land Cruiser or GX or LX off-road anyway, but that's not true. Just like high mileage oil that lasts for 20,000 miles, that's a selling point not because people change their oil every 20,000 miles. It's that the consumer thinks and believes that since the oil is rated for 20,000 miles, that it's stronger for everyday, normal, typical use. So too is my analogy if Lexus and Toyota would fix their Land Cruiser marketing and market it as a capable vehicle and show it being used in the hands of capable professionals. Even though the average soccer mommy won't take it off-road, it would be sellable because the buyer would think and have the perception that their Land Cruiser 300 or GX or LX could do anything and go anywhere. So they would be willing to pay that extra premium for that capability even though they're never going to use it. Lexus and Toyota didn't do that. They should do it. And for the love of all things Toyota, they've got to stop screwing around and just bring the Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport here to America. If not, bring it over as the Lexus LX600 in some sort of off-road trim, because I'm not buying any Lexus with a cheap Mickey Mouse Happy Meal Cracker Jack box dollar store interior. It's not about what it costs. It's just not happening. I don't want that as a luxury car buyer, and neither does anybody else. Nobody asked for a cheaper Lexus. Maybe the Toyota, okay, got an argument, bring over the Land Cruiser 250, cheapen it down. That's all good. But what about the Lexus GX buyers here that have bought these GXs for many, many years now? We're still here, and we don't want that interior, and yeah, we still want to go off-road, but whether we're going off-road or going to soccer practice, you definitely want the interior. Some want to say, well, that's what the Lexus LX600's for, in the ultra luxury. And that's a valid argument too. You know, the Lexus LX600 Ultra Luxury is a proper Lexus interior with that wood steering wheel, but it loses EKDSS and it loses some other off-road features that the mother vehicle, the Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport, does have. Again, regardless, if you market a vehicle that does it all, even though people are never going to do any of that, it will still sell. Lexus, if you're out there listening, which of course you are, listen to not what I'm saying, listen to what everybody else out there in YouTube is saying, out on the internet is saying, and out in the real world in the dealerships are saying. That Mickey Mouse interior is not cutting it. It's going to have a lot of buyers that are not Toyota nerds and Toyota dorks going over to Mercedes and Kia and Genesis and whatever else, Infiniti, whatever other luxury brand that has a better wow factor the moment they open the door and sit their butt in it. When I got out of that Lexus GX550 at the dealership just yesterday and I closed the door, we took our Toyota Sienna there. I thought for a second that I was in the Sienna. When I closed the GX550 door, it had that same tinny, lower grade sound that our Toyota Sienna back there makes when you close the door. I had to, what car am I in? That shouldn't happen in a GX550 Overtrail, because in this GX460, when you close the door, you know you're on a Lexus. When you're in that Lexus GX550, you don't realize you're in a Lexus, and that has got to change.